Welcome to the deep dive. Today, our mission is laser focused on a crisis that has reached, frankly, a terrifying tipping point.
It absolutely has.
We're examining a situation around Kenneth Swift Justice Traywick, inmate, #17252.
Right.
His peaceful protest, a hunger strike, has now stretched into its 34th day, and it's revealing a profound systemic failure within the Alabama Department of Corrections.
And that's really the heart of it. We're using the sources you provided, Traywick's demands, the legal analysis from his wife, Dr. Elizabeth Hancock Traywick, advocacy reports, to understand this. Because this isn't just a protest anymore. It's an acute, escalating medical emergency.
And the response from the ADOC, it's been a calculated total isolation. Media, the community, they're all asking about medical safeguards, escalation plans, and they're getting nothing.
Just a wall of silence.
Exactly. So today, our mission is to cut through that silence. We want you to understand the systemic rot Traywick is exposing and the massive price, both financial and ethical, the state is paying to maintain this crisis.
This one man's resistance is a lens, a powerful one. We're using his case to show you these ongoing systemic failures that, they violate the First and Eighth Amendments. The state is actively investing millions to defend these failures instead of just fixing them.
Okay, so let's unpack the timeline of how we got here, because this didn't just happen overnight.
No, not at all.
The protest officially began on November 28th, 2025. That's when Traywick started his hunger strike at Bullock Correctional Facility. But this was the culmination of something that had been building for a long time.
It really was.
Yeah.
The name Swift Justice is just so deeply ironic here. Because he had been documenting and exposing these dangerous practices for a while.
What kind of practices are we talking about?
Specifically, the excessive use of chemical agents and the really horrific living conditions for mentally ill inmates at Bullock.
And according to the sources, that exposure made him a target.
A huge target. The flashpoint, the thing that pushed him to this, was an incident around November 20th. And Officer Glover allegedly sprayed him with chemical agents from behind while he was just sitting on his bed.
And that alleged attack was connected to something else, right?
Yes. Crucially, it was linked to his role as a witness in an incident involving another inmate, Michael Rouser. So he was protesting targeted personal retaliation for speaking out.
And even with media attention on this, on a life-threatening hunger strike, the ADOC's response was, what?
To find him guilty on disciplinary charges for the strike itself, they punished the protest, they completely ignored the cause.
That denial, it just puts his demands into such sharp focus. They weren't for, personal comforts.
Not at all. First, he wanted an immediate transfer away from Bullock to escape the threat.
Okay.
Second, an end to all retaliation against anyone who speaks out or seeks legal help. So protecting others.
Right. And there was a third one.
The removal of those disciplinary charges. And a fourth, which I think is very telling, was a direct meeting with Commissioner John Hamm.
Signaling that he believed this had to be handled at the very top.
Exactly. And he made his intentions perfectly clear. He said, and I'm quoting, "I will make them kill me." When a person is willing to do that, it tells you every other avenue for justice has collapsed.
That is the highest stakes protest you can possibly have. Which brings us to the communication blackout. Because by day 15, he was in a medical crisis. Today, day 34. The silence from the ADOC is the primary issue.
It's an absolute institutional wall of silence. The family tries to get basic updates and they get voicemail loops, staff denying policy, or they misuse federal privacy laws like APA.
Using a law meant to protect privacy as a shield for a lack of transparency.
Precisely. And what's so illuminating here is we have documented proof that the ADOC can communicate when it wants to, when it serves their narrative.
You're talking about the Costello-DeMarcus Vaughn case.
I am. The contrast is just staggering.
Yeah.
In Vaughn's case, he signed a waiver, and the ADOC immediately released his detailed medical history. They noted he left the hospital against medical advice twice. They documented everything.
So they have a process. They know how to do it.
They have a clear, proven process for medical disclosure when they want to defend themselves. But when Traywick's family or the media asks for an update, that process just evaporates.
What does that tell you? It tells you they're choosing silence when the information might reveal their own shortcomings.
And that silence is incredibly dangerous right now on day 34. The questions people are asking today are about the medical framework. What is the oversight? What is the escalation plan? A lack of clarity on those safeguards is what leads to avoidable harm.
And this denial goes right to the top of the facility. On day 12, Traywick managed to make a brief call. He said Warden McKee had visited him.
And what did the warden claim?
He claimed to be unaware of any reason for the strike.
Unaware. That suggests an official policy of denial. It's not ignorance, it's a strategy.
And it was backed up by a physical blackout, too.
A total ban on physical mail, on legal access, on family communication for anyone in restrictive housing. They were literally taking away pens and paper.
Legal advocates argue that this total isolation violates the constitutional right of access to courts. Can you just ground that for us? What does that mean practically?
In simple terms, it means you have to have the tools to fight your case. If the state takes away your pen, your paper, your ability to contact the outside world, they are shutting down the judicial process against themselves. It ensures they can't be held accountable from the inside.
Okay, now let's move to the legal analysis that was submitted by Dr. Traywick. Her professional background, I mean, it gives her critique so much weight.
Oh, absolutely. She has a PhD in counselor education. She's been a juvenile corrections administrator. She knows these systems inside and out.
And what does her analysis detail?
Severe Eighth Amendment violations. And this goes beyond just negligence. She documents these inhumane conditions in Bullock's mental health dorms, people being forced to eat and sleep in the same unsanitary spaces, severe pest infestation.
That's horrifying. We're talking about the most vulnerable people being subjected to conditions that are actively making them sick.
And it's a clear legal violation. But her letter also highlights a practice that speaks to a total disregard for human dignity.
And what's that?
The allegation that during count procedures, officers would command people to stop urinating.
To be clear, we're talking about prohibiting basic bodily functions. What does that say about the culture inside that facility?
It reveals a culture where control is prioritized over decency, where punishment is delivered through humiliation. And her analysis points out this directly contradicts Supreme Court precedent.
Hope v. Pelser, another Alabama case.
Exactly. The Supreme Court has already condemned similar punitive practices in Alabama. So when officials do it anyway, they are operating outside of clearly established rights.
Which means they could be held personally accountable, not just the institution.
Precisely. They are on notice that this is unconstitutional. And on top of all that, the ADOC is failing its basic mission of rehabilitation. They offer almost nothing beyond a basic GED.
No parenting classes, no anger management, no real trade skills. You're functionally guaranteeing people will fail when they get out.
Which also violates case law. Inadequate services contribute to unconstitutional conditions. The system isn't just cruel, it is structurally designed to fail.
And the financial cost of that perpetual failure is it's staggering. ADOC is the state's largest liability risk.
The numbers should shock you, the taxpayer. Since 2020, ADOC has spent an estimated $57 million on legal expenses.
$57 million.
And that money is not going toward hiring more staff or mental health programs or fixing the facilities.
No. Where is it going?
Nearly $40 million is going to fight the Department of Justice lawsuit over these exact conditions. And another $17 million is for settlements and defense costs for individual officers in civil rights cases. The state is paying for the consequences of brutality.
And we're not talking about minor incidents.
Not at all. 94 settled lawsuits since 2020 involved excessive force, and in 45% of those cases, the victim required hospitalization.
Hospitalization. I mean, that money could have funded every single one of those rehab programs multiple times over. Instead, it's paying for damage control.
And it's created what we can call an impunity loop.
The impunity loop. Explain that.
Okay, look at the case of Sergeant A. Edmonds. He was named in lawsuits that cost the state over $198,000. And what happened to him?
He was promoted?
He was promoted to lieutenant. The State Personnel Board actively blocks the firing of officers named in these expensive lawsuits. So the message is clear. Brutality carries no personal risk. The state will pay for it.
And this culture is so pervasive, it even impacts people trying to do the right thing inside the system, like Traywick's own son.
Zai. He's a correctional officer himself at a local jail. He became an officer to prove not all guards are bad. But even he, a member of law enforcement, was denied basic information about his own father's critical medical status.
The system protects itself, first and foremost.
Absolutely. And this whole crisis is happening within a system the DOJ has already cited for unconstitutional conditions, going back to 2019. The problems, understaffing, violence, contraband, they've only gotten worse.
Right. And there was a judicial order to hire 2,000 more officers.
That has gone completely unmet. Security staff numbers keep dropping, even with pay raises, and that understaffing, that is the engine of the violence Traywick was protesting.
Officers sleeping on post, delayed emergency responses. It's chaos. And instead of fixing the staffing, we see reforms being reversed.
A perfect example is the good behavior credit. It was drastically reduced. From a potential 40 days off, a sentence for every 30 served, down to just 15.
So the state's priority is moving toward longer, harsher punishment in a system that's already broken and overcrowded.
And we can't fall for the idea that building a new $1 billion prison will fix this. Alabama's prison building sprees in the 1980s didn't solve overcrowding or violence then.
And it won't now, not if the underlying culture of impunity remains.
The problems the DOJ cites today mirror the ones from the landmark PV Locke case back in 1976. This is a decades-long refusal to meet a basic standard of care.
So what does this all mean for you, the learner, in terms of accountability? It means Traywick's protest has highlighted a system that is making a calculated choice.
A very clear choice.
It's choosing to spend $57 million on legal defense for violence, rather than funding the ethical reforms required by law.
And then that raises the big question. When the ADOC commissioner sits on the sentencing commission with judges and prosecutors, but the system just keeps paying out millions to settle brutality lawsuits, who is actually accountable? The state has decided defending misconduct is a better financial choice than reform.
And today, on day 34, their response to a life-and-death protest is silence. It's a strategy that exposes the complete lack of a medical framework for a crisis, and it's a strategy that creates predictable, avoidable harm.
So considering the chronic nature of these failures, documented since 1976, and that the state keeps rejecting reform models that work elsewhere, like in Texas with their investment in drug treatment, what kind of focused, sustained public pressure is it going to take to finally force the ADOC to meet the minimal civilized measure of decency and prioritize a human life over its legal defense?